had you hosted a summit here in Nashville for essentially to encourage more Republican women to be running for office. You know, I was at your press conference, and one of the things that was said was that us in the media, when we report on women who are politicians in politics, that we kind of assume that you guys are just a monolithic vote. Yeah, do you agree with that, and what do you think of that idea?
You know, I think that was a legitimate concern to the press, that it's referred to as the woman's vote, who's going to get the woman's vote. And I have not, I think women are much more than that. I think they have come from all walks of life, all regions of this nation. They have different concerns that bring them to the ballot box or make them seek out a certain person to support politically. And I think it's wrong for elected officials. I think it's wrong for the media to refer to the woman's vote. Now, I do think that my party needs to do more, and that was the whole purpose of this summit. It was for elected Republican officials across the United States to come and meet and talk about how do you now mentor and help another Republican in your state to run for office and help them along. And that was the whole purpose of it. And, I think as women, we need to make sure that we're not taken for granted in electoral process and say, affiliate with just one party or just one particular candidate, national candidate, because you will be taken for granted. That elected official ought to always beg and seek out your vote, not just assume because you're a woman you'll vote this way.
And maybe to put you on the spot a little bit, when it comes to coverage of the legislature here, and we don't have very many women. We have less than a fourth of either chamber are women. It seems like we'll have the attention on the cat fights of sorts. Susan Lynn versus May Beavers, and it's kind of characterized that way. What have been your thoughts specifically on how legislative politics have been covered in terms of attention on women?
Well, I honestly feel like the media has pretty much always given me personally a fair shake. To be honest with you, the two females that you mentioned do fight. They do have they do have personal issues. I don't know whether it's newsworthy or not, but I've actually brought them into my office, both of them, and said, "Do you see what you're doing? Do you see how that's damaging the image of women in elected office? That you can't get beyond some of these personal differences." But I have to be quick to add, I've got some male colleagues that fight with each other over stuff that I think, really? It's when you're dealing with people, you're going to have to deal with their personalities and human behavior. But, I think that I haven't seen a prejudice against women necessarily from Tennessee press. I just haven't seen that at all.
I also, to throw in on that, it's obviously I'm a woman, and covering women in the legislature, it's, it doesn't matter who they are to me. I think one of the things that was really cool about the Tennessee legislature is that where there were so many, yes, there are a few women in the legislature, but the women there have been the Speaker of the House. Jamie was Senate President Pro Tem at one point, and before that, Chair of the Senate Education Committee. Now, former Representative Deborah Maggart was caucus chair. So we're talking about women in high-profile leadership roles. So while there might not be many of them, they had big microphones because they could, everything that they said, they had a lot of influence on how things happened in the state. And so maybe it surprises me sometimes when I hear those numbers of how few women there are, just because of the fact that the women that are in the Tennessee legislature have had such prominent roles and have never been shy about taking charge and doing what's right for the people and what's right for their colleagues.
And I'll just follow up with that particular program. I think that's a really good point, because my goal is not necessarily to get more women. My goal is to get more qualified women. So it's an issue of quality. I want the very best and the brightest in the General Assembly. If they happen to be women, I want to be supportive of that. But that's secondary to having high quality people. And I think because we kind of have that attitude, we do have the women that are elected are leaders.
I wanted to share some stats that I got. I was looking at how often we quote women in our stories. And there are a couple studies done. The Women's Media Center did a study that looked at the coverage of the 2012 presidential election from January until November. And less than 19% of the quotes in our stories came from women, or in TV stories came from women. And I think the number was 19% of quotes in print and TV came from women. NPR did a lot better, but they actually not a lot better. Only 23% of quotes came from women there. So, Kara, as someone who's been on that side, what do you think of those numbers?
I guess it surprises me, but at the same time, maybe not. Because look, when I'm a TV reporter, as a TV reporter, on certain stories, when you're needing an interview about, what do people think about wine and grocery stores, you're going to pretty much accost anyone the first 5 people you see on the street. I mean, because, many of us hate these man-on-the-street interviews because some of us wonder whether they really add that much value to the stories. But you have to do it. So I will say this. Sometimes women, maybe those numbers are skewed that way because I feel like there are many times when women are scared to talk or don't want to talk, and some of it is a little vain. Oh, I don't have makeup on right now, or oh, I'm wearing my workout clothes, or something like that. And usually the guys don't say that. And hey, I've been there, but because there are days when I've had to go on television with no makeup on, and I'm like, oh gosh, everybody's going to think I look hideous. But I think that might be one of the reasons some of those TV numbers are skewed, is because I will say that it seems like when you're just going up to anyone and asking them for an interview about wine and grocery stores, sometimes the men are more willing to put their opinion forward. I don't know whether it's maybe women are like, well, if my friends see me and they disagree, they'll be mad at me, things like that. I'm not sure, but those numbers, they surprise me up front, but I think there could be a reason for them.
I think it says to me I'm going to have to stop dodging the press so much.